What if Harry Potter could freeze time but aged twice as fast every time he used it? Chapter 1. The frozen moment. The snitch darted just beyond Harry's fingertips, a golden blur against the crisp autumn sky. He leaned forward on his firebolt, the wind rushing through his hair as the tiny winged ball took a sharp dive toward the Quidditch pitch below. Slytherin seeker Malfoy was nowhere in sight. This was his chance. "Come on," Harry muttered, urging his broom downward. The stands blurred around him, the roar of the crowd fading as he focused entirely on the glint of gold. A flash of movement caught his eye, Ginny, streaking across the field with the quaffle tucked under her arm. She hadn't seen the bludger hurtling directly toward her head. Neither had the rest of the team. Harry's heart stopped. He was 50 feet away. Too far to shout a warning sheet here. Too far to intercept the bludger. The snitch forgotten, he yanked his broom toward Ginny, knowing he'd never make it in time. "No!" he shouted. And everything stopped. The bludger hung motionless in the air, inches from Ginny's temple. Her red hair was frozen mid-whip, her expression determined and oblivious to the danger. The crowd had become a silent tableau of open mouths and wide eyes. Even the banners stopped fluttering, hanging perfectly still in the air. Harry nearly fell off his broom. He gripped the handle tighter, steadying himself as he stared at the impossible scene around him. The silence was absolute, oppressive. "What the?" His voice sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness. Cautiously, Harry flew closer to Ginny. He waved a hand in front of her face. "Nothing." He poked her shoulder gently. She remained frozen, solid as a statue. He reached out and touched the bludger. Unlike Ginny, it moved under his fingers, though it felt heavier than normal. With effort, he pushed it away from her, diverting its path several feet to the right. His mind raced. Had he done this? Had he somehow stopped time? He looked down at his hands, then at the motionless world around him. Experimentally, he flew across the pitch, weaving between the suspended players. He passed Ron, guarding the goalposts with an intense expression, and Malfoy, who had apparently spotted the snitch after all and was diving from the opposite direction. The snitch. It hung motionless near the center of the pitch. Harry flew to it and plucked it from the air, feeling its weight in his palm. The wings didn't flutter. "This is mental," he whispered. A sudden wave of exhaustion washed over him. His limbs felt heavy, his vision blurring at the edges. Whatever this was, he couldn't maintain it much longer. Clutching the snitch, he returned to his original position and tried to figure out how to restart time. "Okay," he muttered. "Just go back to normal." Nothing happened. "Come on." He closed his eyes and concentrated, imagining the world resuming its motion. The roar of the crowd slammed into him like a physical force. Wind whipped past his face again. The sounds of the game, shouts, the commentary, the thwack of bludgers, returned in full force. Harry opened his eyes to see everything moving once more, the players darting around the pitch. Ginny continued her flight path, the bludger now sailing harmlessly past where her head had been moments before. She scored, and the Gryffindor section erupted in cheers. And in Harry's hand, the snitch struggled against his grip. "Potter has the snitch." Lee Jordan's voice boomed across the stadium. "Gryffindor wins." But wait, did anyone see him catch it? That was the strangest. I don't think anyone even saw. Harry stared at the snitch in his hand, his mind reeling. The exhaustion hit him again, stronger this time. He felt like he'd played 3 matches back to back. His stomach growled fiercely, and a dull headache pounded behind his eyes. As the team surrounded him, slapping his back and cheering, Harry forced a smile. Whatever had just happened, he couldn't explain it to them. Not yet. Not until he understood it himself. "You did what?" Ron's voice echoed in the empty common room later that night. The celebration had finally died down, and the trio had claimed the comfortable chairs by the fire. "I froze time," Harry said quietly, still not quite believing it himself. Everything just stopped. Except for me. Hermione leaned forward, her brow furrowed. That's impossible, Harry. Even time turners don't actually freeze time, they just send you back in it. I know what I saw, Hermione. Harry ran a hand through his hair. 1 second everything was normal, the next it was like someone hit pause on the world. Wicked, Ron breathed, eyes wide. So you just grabbed the snitch while everything was frozen? That's brilliant. Ron. Hermione admonished. That's cheating. Is it though? Ron argued. It's not in any rulebook that you can't use, whatever this is. Harry shook his head. I wasn't thinking about the snitch. I was trying to save Ginny from that bludger. Hermione's expression softened. And no one saw you move her out of the way? I didn't move her. I moved the bludger. And no one saw anything. To everyone else, it must have looked like I suddenly had the snitch and the bludger change direction on its own. Hermione chewed her lip thoughtfully. Harry, we need to figure out what triggered this. Was it just fear for Ginny? Have you ever experienced anything like this before? Harry thought back. No. Never. And I've been in plenty of dangerous situations before. Could it be some kind of new spell you know who put on you? Ron suggested, his expression darkening. I don't think so. It felt. I don't know, natural somehow. Like accidental magic, but controlled. Harry flexed his fingers, remembering the strange sensation. The thing is, when it was over, I felt completely drained. Like I'd run a marathon. And starving. That makes sense, Hermione nodded. Magic always requires energy. If you did something as powerful as stopping time, it would take a massive amount of energy from you. Ron leaned back in his chair. So can you do it again? On purpose? Harry hesitated. I don't know. I could try, I suppose. Not here, Hermione said quickly. We need somewhere private, where no one will notice if anything strange happens. The three exchanged glances. Room of requirement? Harry suggested. The corridor on the 7th floor was deserted when they arrived. Harry paced back and forth 3 times, concentrating hard. We need a place to safely test my new ability, a place where we can experiment with time magic. A door materialized in the wall. Harry pushed it open to reveal a spacious room with cushioned floors and walls, various clocks scattered around, and a large hourglass in the center. The room knows what we need even when we don't fully understand it ourselves, Hermione said, examining a clock with 13 hands. Harry moved to the center of the room. All right, here goes nothing. He closed his eyes, trying to recapture the feeling from the Quidditch pitch. The desperate need to stop something terrible from happening. The surge of magic that had flowed through him. He concentrated harder, his face scrunching with effort. Nothing happened. Maybe you need to feel threatened. Ron suggested, picking up a soft cushion. I could throw this at your head. Ron, be serious, Hermione scolded. I am. Harry said it happened when Ginny was in danger. Maybe it's triggered by threat. Harry nodded. Worth a try. Ron hefted the cushion and without warning hurled it straight at Harry's face. Harry flinched, raising his hands defensively, and the cushion froze in mid-air, inches from his nose. Ron and Hermione were statues, Ron's arms still extended from the throw, Hermione's mouth open mid-protest. The clock hands had stopped ticking. The sand in the hourglass hung suspended. I did it, Harry whispered, circling around his frozen friends. He poked Ron's shoulder experimentally. Like the bludger, Ron felt solid but movable with enough force. Harry decided against shifting his friend's position, instead walking around the room examining the various frozen timepieces. The silence pressed in on him again, broken only by his own breathing and footsteps. It was eerie, like being the only living thing in the world. After a few minutes, the now familiar exhaustion began creeping in. Harry moved back to his original position and concentrated on releasing his hold on time. With a soft whoosh, everything resumed. The cushion hit him square in the face, and he staggered backward. "Really don't think this is the best apro, Harry?" Hermione rushed forward as he stumbled. "Are you okay?" Harry nodded, the room spinning slightly. "It worked. I froze time again." Ron's eyes widened. "For how long?" "We didn't notice anything. Maybe a couple minutes." I walked around the room, looked at the clocks. "You look pale," Hermione said, studying his face with concern. "And your hands are shaking." Harry looked down. She was right, a fine tremor ran through his fingers. "Side effects, I guess." "I'm really hungry again." Ron dug in his pocket and produced a slightly squashed chocolate frog. "Here." Harry devoured it gratefully, feeling marginally better as the chocolate hit his system. "Thanks." Hermione was watching him closely, her analytical mind clearly working overtime. "Harry, we need to be careful with this. If it drains you so much from just a couple of minutes of use." I know. But think about how useful this could be. Especially with Voldemort out there." Harry ignored Ron's wince at the name. "If I could freeze time during a fight, I could disarm everyone before they even knew what happened." "Or you could collapse from exhaustion in the middle of said fight," Hermione countered. "We need to understand this better before you start using it regularly." Harry nodded reluctantly. She had a point. "All right. Let's test it more here, figure out my limits." Over the next week, Harry returned to the room of requirement whenever he could slip away unnoticed. Each time, he practiced freezing time for slightly longer periods, pushing his endurance. He discovered several important things about his new ability. First, the longer he kept time frozen, the more it drained him. 5 minutes left him hungry and tired. 10 minutes gave him a pounding headache. 15 minutes made his muscles ache like he'd run for miles. Second, he could manipulate objects in frozen time, but anything particularly heavy required enormous effort. Moving Ron had been like trying to push a car. Third, and most interestingly, he couldn't affect other people's minds during stop time. When he wrote a note and placed it in Ron's hand, Ron had no memory of it appearing when time resumed, despite now holding the paper. Harry kept his discoveries to himself, sharing them only with Ron and Hermione. Ron continued to see the brilliant possibilities, while Hermione grew increasingly concerned about the physical toll. Neither of them noticed the first gray hair that appeared at Harry's temple after a particularly long session. Harry spotted it while brushing his teeth and plucked it out immediately, dismissing it as stress. The dark circles under his eyes were easier to explain away. 6th year was difficult for everyone. The incident in potions happened 3 weeks after the Quidditch match. Snape loomed over their cauldrons like an overgrown bat, his lip curled in perpetual disdain. "Your draft of living death should be turning a delicate shade of lilac by now," he announced, pausing to sneer at Neville's murky green concoction. Harry's potion was actually going well for once, thanks to some margin notes in his second-hand textbook. The mysterious Half-Blood Prince had yet to steer him wrong. He was just about to add the final ingredient when he noticed Malfoy smirking from across the room. The blonde Slytherin casually flicked his wand under his desk, and Harry felt something zip past his ear. Instinctively, Harry glanced into his cauldron. A small object had landed in his nearly perfect potion, which was beginning to bubble ominously. Without thinking, Harry froze time. The bubbling potion hung suspended mid-boil, the surface tense but motionless. Harry peered inside and spotted the culprit, a bouncing spider eye, which would have caused his draft to explode spectacularly if allowed to dissolve. Carefully, Harry extracted the spider eye with his stirring rod. The frozen liquid made it difficult, like fishing something out of half-set jelly, but he managed to remove it. For good measure, he walked over to Malfoy's cauldron and dropped it in instead, then returned to his station. The familiar exhaustion was setting in, but Harry grinned as he released his hold on time. The classroom burst back into motion. Snape was mid-stride toward Seamus's cauldron when a loud pop and hiss came from the Slytherin side of the room. Malfoy's cauldron erupted, sending purple sludge flying in all directions. Most of it landed on Malfoy himself, who yelped in surprise as angry red boils began forming on his skin. "Malfoy! What did you add to your potion?" Snape demanded, looking genuinely surprised at his favorite student's failure. "And nothing. I swear." It was perfect, and then, Malfoy's protests were cut short as he caught sight of Harry's smirk. His eyes narrowed. "Potter! You did this!" Harry arranged his face into a mask of innocence. "I've been at my own cauldron the entire time, Professor. Ask anyone." The class nodded in agreement. No one had seen Harry move, because no one could see him during stop time. Snape's dark eyes bored into Harry's, and for a moment, Harry worried the professor might try legilimency. But Snape merely curled his lip and turned back to Malfoy. "Hospital wing, Mr. Malfoy. The rest of you, bottle your samples and bring them to my desk." As the class filed out afterward, Ron clapped Harry on the shoulder. "That was bloody brilliant. Did you use your, Harry nodded, keeping his voice low. "Malfoy tried to sabotage my potion. I just returned the favor while everything was frozen." "Harry!" Hermione hissed, catching up to them. "That's exactly what I was worried about. Using your ability for something so petty. He could have seriously injured me if that potion exploded," Harry defended. "That's not the point. The more you use this power, the more it drains you. What if you really need it for something important and you've exhausted yourself getting back at Malfoy?" Harry was about to retort when a wave of dizziness hit him. He stumbled slightly, catching himself on the wall. "Harry?" Ron's voice sounded concerned. "I'm fine," Harry muttered. "Just tired." Hermione gave him a knowing look. "Let's get some food in you." As they headed to the Great Hall, Harry caught his reflection in a suit of armor. He froze, falling behind his friends. Another gray hair had appeared, and the lines around his eyes when he squinted looked deeper somehow. His face seemed older. "Harry?" Hermione called, turning back. Harry shook his head, dismissing the thought. It was just the weird reflection in the armor's curved surface. Just stress. Just lack of sleep. Nothing to worry about. That evening, a note arrived summoning Harry to Dumbledore's office. He made his way there with a sense of apprehension, wondering if somehow the headmaster had discovered his new ability. "Acid pops," he told the gargoyle, which leapt aside to reveal the spiral staircase. Dumbledore was seated behind his desk when Harry entered, his half-moon spectacles perched on his crooked nose. "Ah, Harry. Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Harry took the offered chair, trying to appear casual. "You wanted to see me, Professor?" Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, his blue eyes twinkling yet serious. "How are you feeling, Harry?" "Fine, sir." The automatic response. "Indeed? You look rather tired. Professor McGonagall mentioned you seem exhausted in her classes lately." Harry shifted uncomfortably. "Just working hard on NEWT classes, sir." Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "And nothing unusual has happened recently? Nothing you might wish to share with me?" Harry hesitated. Should he tell Dumbledore about his ability? The headmaster had kept secrets from him before, but he promised more honesty this year. I'm not sure what you mean, sir." Dumbledore sighed softly. "Magic, Harry, particularly powerful magic, often reveals itself in times of great need. Sometimes these revelations can be quite unexpected, even for the witch or wizard experiencing them." Harry's heart raced. He did know something. Has something unexpected happened to you lately, Harry? Dumbledore asked gently. Harry swallowed. I think I can freeze time, Professor. Instead of surprise, Dumbledore merely nodded. I suspected as much. There have been ripples in the castle's magic. Small moments where the ancient enchantment seemed to hiccup, for lack of a better term. You can feel when I use it. Not precisely. But Hogwarts can, in its way. Dumbledore rose and walked to a cabinet, retrieving a shallow stone basin that Harry recognized as his pensieve. This ability you've discovered, Harry, is exceedingly rare. In fact, I've only known of one other wizard who possessed it. Who? All in good time. Dumbledore placed the pensieve on his desk. What's important now is that you understand something crucial about magic, particularly unusual magic like yours. Harry leaned forward, eager to finally get some answers. Magic always comes with a price, Harry. The more powerful the magic, the steeper the price. Ordinary spells use a small amount of your magical energy, which replenishes naturally. But what you're doing, stopping the very flow of time, requires something more substantial. A chill ran down Harry's spine. What kind of price? Dumbledore's expression grew grave. That, Harry, is something you may already be discovering for yourself. Harry thought of the gray hairs, the exhaustion, the hunger. It drains me physically. Yes, but not in the way you might think. Dumbledore paced slowly behind his desk. I advise great caution, Harry. Use this ability only when absolutely necessary. The consequences of its overuse could be significant. But why do I have this ability at all? Where did it come from? Dumbledore paused, considering his answer carefully. I have a theory, though it is just that, a theory. When Voldemort's killing curse rebounded that night in Godric's Hollow, it created a connection between you unlike any other in magical history. That connection may have fractured your relationship with time itself in ways we're only now beginning to understand. Harry absorbed this, his mind racing. Sir, if Voldemort finds out about this, indeed. Which is why discretion is paramount. Dumbledore fixed Harry with an intense gaze. Be very careful, Harry. And come to me immediately if you notice any changes in yourself. Harry nodded, unsettled by the headmaster's cryptic warning. Yes, Professor. As he left the office, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that Dumbledore had told him just enough to be cautious, but not enough to truly understand what was happening to him. The attack on Hogsmeade came without warning. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were in the Three Broomsticks enjoying butterbeers when the first screams erupted outside. They rushed to the window to see black-robed figures operating into the main street, wands already firing curses. Death Eaters, Harry hissed, drawing his wand. Here. Now. There are students out there, Hermione said, her face pale. Harry didn't hesitate. Let's go. They burst out of the pub into chaos. Townspeople were running for cover as spells blasted storefronts and street cobbles. Harry spotted a group of terrified third-years huddled behind an overturned cart, directly in the path of advancing Death Eaters. Get them to safety, Harry told Ron and Hermione, pointing to the children. I'll distract the Death Eaters. Harry, no, Hermione began, but he was already running toward the black-robed figures. Hey, he shouted, firing a stunning spell that caught one Death Eater in the shoulder, spinning him around. The others turned, and Harry recognized Bellatrix Lestrange's wild eyes behind her mask. Potter, she cackled. The Dark Lord will be so pleased. Spells flew at Harry from multiple directions. He dodged and blocked, returning fire when he could, but he was quickly being surrounded. A cutting curse grazed his arm, and a blasting spell demolished the wall behind him, showering him with debris. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ron and Hermione rushing the third-years toward Honeydukes, but more Death Eaters were closing in on them too. All across the village, students were exposed and vulnerable. There were too many attackers. Too many innocent people in danger. And not enough time. Time. Of course. Harry focused, reaching for that now familiar feeling. The desperation surged through him, and everything stopped. The spells hung frozen in mid-air, jets of colored light suspended like bizarre sculptures. Death Eaters stood motionless, their faces fixed in expressions of malice and triumph. The screaming villagers and students were paused mid-flight. Harry took a deep breath in the sudden silence. He had time now. All the time he needed. He began methodically moving through the village, starting with the most immediate dangers. He pushed spells off course, aiming them at walls or the sky. He took wands from Death Eater's rigid hands, snapping some and tossing others onto rooftops. He found students in danger and moved them behind cover or into shops. Those who were injured, he dragged to the 3 broomsticks where Madame Rosmerta could help them when time resumed. Harry worked tirelessly, sweat pouring down his face as he manipulated the frozen scene. Moving people was exhausting, like pushing through deep mud while carrying heavy weights, but he persisted, knowing lives depended on it. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. The familiar exhaustion was becoming overwhelming, but Harry pressed on. There were still Death Eaters to disarm, still students to save. By the time he had cleared the main street and checked all the alleyways, nearly 45 minutes had passed in frozen time. Harry staggered back to his original position, his vision blurring around the edges. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. His stomach felt like it was trying to digest itself. But it was done. When time resumed, the Death Eaters would be wandless and the students would be safe. It was worth whatever price he had to pay. Harry released his hold on time. The world exploded back into motion and sound. Death Eaters discovered their missing wands with cries of confusion. Spells hit empty air or buildings. Students found themselves suddenly behind cover or inside shops with no memory of how they'd gotten there. And Harry collapsed to his knees, his strength utterly spent. He was vaguely aware of the crack of apparition as Order members finally arrived. Of Bellatrix's shriek of rage. Of more spells flying overhead. But it was all distant, like he was underwater. Harry. Harry. Hermione's voice cut through the fog. Her face swam into view above him, her eyes wide with shock. "Fine," he slurred, trying to stand and failing. "Just, tired." "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand reaching toward his face but stopping short, as if afraid to touch him. Ron appeared beside her, his freckles standing out starkly against his pale face. "Bloody hell, Harry, what happened to you?" Harry didn't understand their reactions. Yes, he was exhausted, but why were they looking at him like that? Like they'd seen a ghost. "We need to get him back to the castle," Hermione said urgently. "Now." As they helped him to his feet, Harry caught his reflection in a shattered shop window. What he saw made his heart stop. Gray streaked his temples like wings. Lines creased the corners of his eyes and mouth. His face was thinner, more angular, the last traces of boyhood gone. He looked at least 20 years old. "What's happening to me?" he whispered, touching his face with trembling fingers. Hermione's eyes filled with tears. "I think we know the price now, Harry. I think we know what it costs to stop time." The hospital wing was quiet except for the soft clicking of Madame Pomfrey's heels as she moved between beds. Most of the students injured in the Hogsmeade attack had been treated and released, leaving Harry alone with his friends and the matron. "I've never seen anything like it," Pomfrey said, waving her wand over Harry for the dozenth time. "Physically, you appear to be approximately 19 or 20 years old, despite being chronologically 16. Harry sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. They looked like his hands, but somehow different. More defined. The hands of a man, not a boy. "Is it permanent?" he asked quietly. Pomfrey hesitated. "I don't know, Mr. Potter. I've run every diagnostic spell I know, and as far as I can tell, you're perfectly healthy. Just, older. Can you reverse it? Ron asked. Aging potions can be reversed. Transfiguration can be undone. But this. She shook her head. This appears to be natural aging, just accelerated. I don't know how to undo natural aging because it's not meant to be undone. Hermione, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. It's equivalent exchange, isn't it? The fundamental law of magic. They all looked at her. You can't create or destroy magical energy, only transform it, she explained. What Harry's doing, stopping time, is massively powerful magic. It has to come from somewhere. Her voice cracked slightly. It's coming from him. From his own lifespan. The realization settled over them like a heavy blanket. So every time I freeze time. Harry began. You're sacrificing your own time, Hermione finished. Living through it twice as fast. The hospital wing doors opened, and Dumbledore entered, his expression grave. I suspected as much, he said quietly. Though I had hoped I was wrong. Harry looked up at the headmaster, suddenly angry. You knew. You knew this would happen and you didn't warn me. I knew it was a possibility, Dumbledore admitted. But I did not know for certain until now. Great lot of good that does me, Harry muttered. How much? Ron asked suddenly. How much time did Harry lose today? Dumbledore considered this. If time was stopped for approximately 45 minutes, and the aging effect is doubled during that period. He aged an extra 45 minutes, Hermione calculated. So in total, he experienced 90 minutes while only 45 passed for the rest of us. He's now 45 minutes older than he should be. Which explains the physical changes, Dumbledore nodded. The body ages at its natural rate during the time stoppage, but since Mr. Potter is experiencing twice as much time as the rest of us, he ages faster from our perspective. Harry's mind was reeling. But I don't look 45 minutes older. I look years older. Dumbledore's eyes were sad. This is not the first time you've used your ability, is it, Harry? No, but, just short bursts. A few minutes here and there. Which have accumulated, Dumbledore said gently. And perhaps the strain of such powerful magic accelerates the effect further. Harry tried to calculate how much he'd aged. He'd used his power maybe 30 times over the past few weeks, usually for just a few minutes. But today he'd pushed it far beyond anything he'd done before. How do I undo it? Harry asked desperately. Dumbledore shook his head. I'm afraid you can't, Harry. The time is spent. The only thing you can do now is be more cautious about using your ability in the future. But it saved lives today, Harry protested. If I hadn't frozen time, people would have died. Indeed they might have, Dumbledore acknowledged. And therein lies your dilemma. How much of your own life are you willing to sacrifice to save others? There was no answer to that. Harry stared down at his older hands, feeling the weight of his new burden. The ultimate choice between his own future and the lives of those around him. I need to understand this better, he said finally. I need to know everything about this ability. Where it came from, how it works, everything. We'll research it, Hermione promised immediately. There must be something in the library about time magic. Dumbledore nodded. I will provide you access to the restricted section, Miss Granger. And I will consult some old colleagues who specialized in temporal magic. And what about Harry? Ron asked. What's he supposed to do now? He looks like he's in his 20s. For now, Mr. Potter should rest, Madame Pomfrey interjected firmly. Whatever has happened, his body has undergone significant stress. Harry nodded numbly, suddenly aware of the bone-deep weariness that permeated his body. As the others left him to sleep, his mind churned with questions and fears. What if he needed to use his power again? How much of his life would it cost next time? How old would he be by the time this war with Voldemort was over? And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small, dark voice whispered, "How many years do you have left to sacrifice?" The Hogwarts rumor mill worked overtime in the days following the Hogsmeade attack. Students whispered about Harry's changed appearance, theories ranging from a botched aging potion to a curse from the Death Eaters. Harry ignored the stares and whispers as best he could, focusing instead on understanding his ability. Hermione practically lived in the library, emerging only for classes and meals, her arms always full of ancient tomes on time magic. Ron, surprisingly, had become Harry's steadfast defender. "Mind your own business," he snapped at a group of gawking fourth years. "He saved your lives, you know." The truth of the Hogsmeade incident had spread quickly, how Harry had somehow disarmed all the Death Eaters and moved students to safety in what seemed like an instant. The Daily Prophet had run a front-page story, "The boy who lived becomes the man who saves." Harry hated the headline almost as much as he hated his reflection. A week after the attack, Harry was studying in the common room when a barn owl swooped through the window, dropping a small scroll on his lap. The parchment bore the Ministry seal. "Mr. Potter, recent events have come to the attention of the Department of Mysteries. Your apparent manifestation of temporal manipulation abilities is of significant interest to our research. A representative will be visiting Hogwarts tomorrow to discuss this matter further." Broderick Bode, Unspeakable Department of Mysteries. Harry showed the letter to Ron and Hermione, his stomach nodding with apprehension. "The Department of Mysteries," Hermione whispered. "This is serious, Harry." "Like I didn't know that already," he said, gesturing to his aged face. "What do they want with you?" Ron asked suspiciously. "After everything that happened there last year." "I don't know." Harry stared at the letter. "But I'm not sure I have a choice about meeting them." The following morning, Professor McGonagall escorted Harry to a small meeting room adjacent to the Great Hall. Waiting inside was a tall, thin man in slate-gray robes, his face partially obscured by a hood. "Mr. Potter," the man said, his voice surprisingly warm. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. My name is Kronos Thorn. I'm an unspeakable specializing in temporal magic." Harry shook the offered hand cautiously. "You're here about what happened in Hogsmeade?" "Among other things." Thorn gestured for Harry to sit. "We've been monitoring unusual temporal disturbances centered around Hogwarts for several weeks now. The incident in Hogsmeade was simply too significant to ignore." "Monitoring?" Harry frowned. "How?" "Time leaves ripples, Mr. Potter. Those sensitive to such things can detect them." Thorn studied Harry's face with keen interest. "But I'm more interested in how this ability manifests for you. And the price you're clearly paying for it." Harry tensed. "What do you know about the price?" Thorn's lips curved in a sad smile. "More than most. Temporal magic always requires sacrifice. Usually, it's magical energy, sometimes physical strength. But true time manipulation, stopping time entirely, demands more. It demands time itself." "My time," Harry said bitterly. "Precisely." Thorn leaned forward. "Mr. Potter, your ability is extraordinarily rare. In all my years of research, I've encountered only theoretical references to wizards capable of completely freezing time. The fact that you can do so at your age is remarkable. I didn't ask for it." "Few of us ask for our unique burdens," Thorn said softly. "Yet we must learn to bear them nonetheless." Something about the man's tone made Harry look up sharply. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." A shadow seemed to pass over Thorn's partially hidden face. "Let's just say I understand temporal magic better than most." He straightened. "The Ministry is interested in studying your ability, Mr. Potter. With your cooperation, we might better understand how it works and perhaps find ways to mitigate its effects on you." Harry hesitated. On one hand, he desperately wanted answers. On the other, he didn't fully trust the Ministry after everything that had happened last year. What would that involve? He asked cautiously. Observation, primarily. Perhaps controlled tests of your ability under safer conditions than a Death Eater attack. Thorn paused. I could also share what I know about temporal magic. It might help you use your ability more efficiently. Meaning I'd age less? Potentially. All magic improves with practice and understanding. Harry considered this. I need to think about it. And talk to Professor Dumbledore. Of course. Thorn rose smoothly. I'll be remaining at Hogwarts for a few days as a consultant. When you've decided, you can find me in the guest quarters on the 3rd floor. As Harry stood to leave, Thorn added, one more thing, Mr. Potter. Whatever you decide about working with the Ministry, I strongly advise caution in using your ability. The human body and mind aren't designed to age at an accelerated rate. There could be unforeseen consequences beyond the physical changes you've already experienced. The warning followed Harry like a shadow as he left the room. I don't trust him, Ron declared that evening as they sat by the fire in the Gryffindor common room. Hermione looked up from her book on temporal theory. Just because he's from the Ministry doesn't automatically make him untrustworthy, Ron. It's not that. There's something off about him. Did you see how he keeps his face hidden? What's he hiding? Harry had to admit Ron had a point. Something about Thorn unsettled him, though he couldn't put his finger on what. What did Dumbledore say? Hermione asked. He was cryptic, as usual. Harry sighed. Said Thorn was indeed a respected unspeakable with expertise in time magic, but that I should be careful what I reveal about my ability. Sounds like Dumbledore doesn't fully trust him either, Ron pointed out. Hermione closed her book. Harry, I haven't found much that's helpful in the library. Just vague references to time magic being dangerous and unpredictable. If Thorn really does know more about your ability. I know. Harry ran a hand through his hair, still not used to how it felt slightly coarser now. I just don't want to become some Ministry experiment. Then set boundaries, Hermione suggested. Tell him you'll answer questions and maybe try some minor demonstrations, but nothing that would put you at risk. Harry nodded slowly. Yeah. Maybe. A commotion at the portrait hole interrupted him. Neville burst in, his face flushed with exertion. Harry. Come quick. There's something wrong with Luna. They rushed after Neville through the corridors to the hospital wing. Inside, they found Luna Lovegood lying on a bed, her normally dreamy expression replaced with confusion and fear. Madame Pomfrey hovered nearby, looking deeply concerned. Luna? What happened? Harry asked, approaching her bed. Luna's silver eyes fixed on him, but there was something wrong with her gaze, it seemed unfocused, struggling to settle. Harry. You're here and not here. Both places. Both times. What's wrong with her? Hermione asked Madame Pomfrey quietly. She was found wandering the 3rd floor corridor, disoriented and speaking nonsense, the matron replied. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her, but she seems to be experiencing some kind of perceptual disturbance. Luna reached out suddenly, grabbing Harry's wrist. Her touch was ice cold. Time is breaking around you, Harry Potter. Cracking like glass. I can see the fractures spreading. A chill ran down Harry's spine. Luna, what do you mean? You're pulling too hard on the threads. They're fraying. Her grip tightened. And he knows. The Time Eater knows. Who knows, Luna? Harry asked, a sense of dread building in his chest. Luna's eyes suddenly rolled back, and she collapsed against the pillows. Madame Pomfrey rushed forward, checking her vitals. She's just unconscious, the matron reported, relief evident in her voice. Whatever episode she was having seems to have passed. As they left the hospital wing, Harry couldn't shake Luna's warning. The Time Eater, he muttered. What did she mean? Luna says a lot of strange things, Ron said, though he looked unsettled. Maybe this time she was just, hallucinating or something. But Hermione was frowning deeply. Temporal perception distortion, she said quietly. What? Both boys asked simultaneously. It's mentioned in one of the books I found. When powerful time magic is used repeatedly in an area, it can sometimes affect sensitive individuals, causing them to perceive multiple time streams simultaneously. She looked at Harry with concern. Your repeated use of time freezing might be having effects beyond just your aging. Harry felt a weight settle in his stomach. So I'm hurting other people now too? Not intentionally, Hermione said quickly. But maybe this is another reason to talk to Thorn. If he knows about temporal magic, he might know how to prevent these side effects. Harry nodded grimly. I'll talk to him tomorrow. As they walked back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry glanced out a window at the darkening sky. For a moment, just a moment, he thought he saw the stars flicker and shift, as if time itself was hiccuping. But then it was gone, and he told himself it was just his imagination. Just his imagination, and not the fractures Luna had warned him about. Chapter 3, Beyond Time. Harry stood at the edge of the Black Lake, skipping stones across its glassy surface. The spring sun warmed his face, but a chill lingered in the air, matching his mood. 3 weeks had passed since his confrontation with Kronos, and though his body had seemingly stabilized, his mind remained unsettled. He glanced down at his reflection in the water. A young man in his early 20s stared back, older than his 16 years, but significantly younger than the aged appearance he'd had immediately after the fight. The streaks of silver at his temples remained, like badges of what he'd endured. Thought I'd find you out here, Ron called, trudging down the path from the castle. Harry skipped another stone, watching it bounce 4 times before sinking. Just needed some air. Yeah, well, Hermione's going mental in the library. Says she's found something about your condition. Ron reached Harry's side, squinting against the sun. You okay, mate? You've been quiet lately. Harry sighed. Just trying to figure out what's happening to me. Every day it's something new. He held up his hand, concentrating slightly. The air around his fingers rippled as he slowed time in a small bubble. Yesterday I accidentally made my pumpkin juice age into wine during breakfast. Ron grinned. Wicked. You should have shared. McGonagall didn't think it was so brilliant. Harry released the temporal bubble. I'm still not fully in control. Sometimes things just happen when I'm not focusing. That's why Hermione's been researching like a woman possessed, Ron said. Come on, let's see what she's found before she hexes me for coming back without you. As they walked back toward the castle, Harry felt the now familiar sensation of time swirling around him like currents in a stream. Since absorbing the energy from Kronos' chronometer, his perception had changed fundamentally. He didn't just see the world, he saw its temporal dimension, objects trailing faint shadows of their past and future positions, people surrounded by subtle auras that hinted at their lifespans. So what's it like? Ron asked suddenly. Seeing time and all that. Harry hesitated. It's hard to explain. Kind of like, those Muggle 3D glasses. It's like I'm wearing special glasses that let me see an extra dimension everyone else misses. He gestured at a bird flying overhead. I can see where it was, where it is, and a kind of blurry impression of where it might go. Sounds brilliant but also a bit mental, Ron offered. Pretty much sums it up, Harry agreed with a half-smile. The castle corridors were quiet, most students enjoying the spring weather outside. In the library, they found Hermione at their usual table in the back corner, surrounded by stacks of ancient books. Her hair was wilder than usual, her eyes bright with the fervor of discovery. Finally, she exclaimed as they approached. I found the most fascinating connection. She stopped abruptly, studying Harry's face. You've been having episodes again, haven't you? Harry's hand went instinctively to his temple. Just small ones. Nothing serious. Sit, she commanded, clearing space at the table. I think I know why your abilities are still evolving. Harry sat, curiosity overriding his reluctance to discuss his condition. Go on. Hermione opened an ancient leather-bound tome entitled Temporal Anomalies in Magical History. I've been researching cases similar to yours, wizards with unusual temporal abilities. They're incredibly rare, but there's a pattern. She turned the book to show them an illustration of a wizard surrounded by concentric circles of light, a lightning bolt hovering over his head. That looks like my scar, Harry said, leaning closer. Exactly. Hermione's eyes gleamed. According to this text, temporal abilities are sometimes triggered by surviving fatal events. The theory is that in the moment between life and death, some wizards experience a temporal fracture, a break in their personal timeline. So when Voldemort tried to kill me as a baby, it didn't just give you that scar and a connection to him. It fundamentally altered your relationship with time itself. Hermione flipped to another page. This wizard, Aldrich Pemberton, survived a killing curse in 1738 and afterward could see brief glimpses of the future. Ron frowned. But Harry doesn't see the future. He stops time. Different manifestations of the same phenomenon, Hermione explained. The killing curse is supposed to instantly end your timeline, your life. When someone survives it, it can create different temporal effects depending on the individual. Harry considered this. So my ability to freeze time came from surviving Avada Kedavra as a baby. But why did it only show up now, 15 years later? That's where it gets interesting, Hermione said, pulling another book forward. Temporal abilities often remain dormant until triggered by extreme stress or a second brush with death. The graveyard, Harry murmured. When Voldemort returned and tried to kill me again. Hermione nodded. I think that second encounter primed your ability, and then the Quidditch incident, when you were desperate to save Ginny, finally activated it. Brilliant, Hermione, Ron said, genuine admiration in his voice. But how does this help Harry control it? Because now we understand its nature, she replied. Your ability isn't just some random power, Harry. It's fundamentally tied to your survival instinct and your connection to Voldemort. Harry processed this information. And Kronos? How does he fit in? From what I can piece together, Kronos gained his abilities through dark magic, rituals specifically designed to manipulate time. Completely different origin from yours, which might explain why you were able to absorb the energy from his chronometer without becoming like him. So what do we do now? Harry asked, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Hermione hesitated. There's more. I think there's a connection between your ability and the prophecy. Harry tensed. After Sirius's death at the Ministry, Dumbledore had finally revealed the prophecy that had made Voldemort target him as a baby, neither can live while the other survives. What kind of connection? The power the Dark Lord knows not, Hermione quoted softly. What if it's this? Your ability to manipulate time. It would certainly give you an advantage he doesn't have. The three friends fell silent, contemplating the implications. If Hermione was right, Harry's temporal abilities might be the key to defeating Voldemort once and for all. There's something else, Hermione said finally, her voice dropping to a whisper. According to these accounts, wizards with temporal abilities tend to have limited lifespans. Harry's stomach dropped. You mean I'm still going to age faster? Not necessarily faster. But these abilities seem to burn brightly and then fade, along with the wizard's life force. She reached for his hand. I'm sorry, Harry. The records are incomplete, but none of these temporal wizards lived past 50. Ron looked stricken. That can't be right. There must be something we can do. Maybe, Hermione said, not sounding convinced. I'm still researching. But Harry, you need to be careful with how much you use your ability. Every time you manipulate time, it seems to consume part of you. Harry nodded, a cold weight settling in his chest. He'd suspected as much from the beginning, but having it confirmed made it real in a way he hadn't been ready for. So I might have 30 years left. Maybe less if I keep using my ability. He tried to keep his voice steady. Well, that's still 30 more years than I'll have if Voldemort kills me, isn't it? Neither of his friends had a response to that. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. He sat by the window in the empty common room, watching the moon trace its path across the sky. Time moved inexorably forward for everyone else, but for him, it had become fluid, malleable, and apparently, finite. The sound of footsteps on the stairs broke his reverie. Ginny appeared, wearing a dressing gown over her pajamas. Couldn't sleep either, she asked, settling into the chair opposite him. Harry shook his head. Too much on my mind. In the weeks since the confrontation with Kronos, Ginny had become an unexpected source of comfort. Unlike others who treated him differently because of his changed appearance, she talked to him exactly the same way she always had, with a refreshing blend of honesty and humor. Want to talk about it? She offered. Or would you prefer to brood dramatically by moonlight? That startled a laugh out of him. Is that what I'm doing? Very effectively, she confirmed with a grin. Very tortured hero. Harry smiled despite himself. Sorry. It's just. Hermione found some information today about people with abilities like mine. Apparently, we don't tend to live very long. Ginny's smile faded. How long? Maybe to 50. Less if I keep using the ability regularly. She was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. That's still a long time, Harry. That's what I told Ron and Hermione. But you don't believe it, she observed shrewdly. Harry sighed. I don't know what I believe anymore. My whole life has been on borrowed time, hasn't it? First surviving when my parents died, then all the times Voldemort has tried to kill me since. Maybe this is just more of the same. Or maybe it's different this time, Ginny suggested. This ability, it saved my life during that Quidditch match, didn't it? And who knows how many others during the Hogsmeade attack. Maybe it's not just borrowed time. Maybe it's time you've earned the right to use as you see fit. Harry looked at her, struck by the perspective. I never thought of it that way. Of course not. You're too busy brooding by moonlight. But her voice was gentle, taking the sting from the words. Harry, none of us knows how much time we have. Look at my family, Dad nearly died from that snake attack. Bill has a dangerous job with Gringotts. The twins test experimental products on themselves daily. We're all living on borrowed time in some way. But most people don't literally age themselves by using magic, Harry pointed out. No, she agreed. But most people don't have the ability to freeze time and save lives either. It's a trade-off, isn't it? The question is whether you think it's worth it. Harry considered this. When you put it that way, yeah, I think it is. Ginny smiled. Good. Now stop brooding and get some sleep. You look like you need it, old man. He laughed and flicked a cushion at her with a small wave of wandless magic, another new ability that had emerged since absorbing Kronos' power. Watch it, Weasley. I might be older, but I've picked up a few new tricks. Her eyes sparkled with challenge. So have I, Potter. So have I. As she headed back to the girls' dormitory, Harry felt lighter somehow. Ginny was right, everyone's time was limited in some way. What mattered was how you used it. The next morning, a school owl delivered a note during breakfast. Harry, please come to my office after breakfast. I believe I have found information that may help with your unique situation. Professor Dumbledore P.S. I find that fizzing whiz-bees make excellent conversation starters. What do you think he's found? Ron asked through a mouthful of toast. No idea, Harry replied. But anything that might help at this point is worth looking into. Hermione frowned thoughtfully. I've been wondering. Dumbledore is over 100 years old, with connections throughout the magical world. If anyone would know about other wizards with temporal abilities, it would be him. You think he's known about this possibility all along? Harry asked. Not necessarily, Hermione hedged. But I think he might have suspected something after you survived the killing curse as a baby. Remember how interested he was when you first told him about your ability? Harry nodded slowly. He said he'd only known of one other wizard who possessed it. I assumed he meant Kronos. Maybe, Hermione said. Or maybe there's more to it. Harry finished his breakfast quickly and headed to the headmaster's office, his mind racing with questions. The gargoyle stepped aside at the password, fizzing whiz-bees, and Harry ascended the spiral staircase. He found Dumbledore seated behind his desk, examining a strange silver device that emitted puffs of purple smoke. The office looked different somehow, the various instruments and artifacts seemed to pulse with temporal energy that Harry could now perceive. Ah, Harry. Thank you for coming. Dumbledore set down the device. How are you feeling today? Better than last week, Harry said honestly. The random temporal effects are happening less frequently. Excellent. Your magic is adapting to the new energy you've absorbed. Dumbledore gestured for Harry to sit. I've been consulting with some old colleagues regarding your condition. One in particular had most interesting insights. Another temporal wizard? Harry asked hopefully. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Not exactly. Nicholas Flamel. Harry's eyebrows shot up. The alchemist? I thought he died after the Philosopher's Stone was destroyed. He and Perenelle did indeed pass on, but not before leaving extensive notes on their research, including some fascinating observations about the nature of time and aging. Dumbledore withdrew an ancient, thin volume from his desk. This is Flamel's personal journal on the subject. Harry accepted the book reverently. And you think this can help me? Nicholas spent 6 centuries studying how to extend life without the corrupting effects that often accompany such endeavors. While your situation is unique, I believe his insights may prove valuable. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. Particularly his work on stabilizing temporal flux. Temporal flux. The uneven flow of time through a magical body, Dumbledore explained. In most wizards, time moves consistently through every cell, every magical pathway. But in rare cases, such as yours, time flows differently, causing accelerated aging in some areas while leaving others untouched. Harry thought about the silver at his temples contrasted with his otherwise youthful appearance. That's happening to me, isn't it? Indeed. And Flamel's research suggests it can be harmonized, balanced throughout your system so that while you may still age somewhat faster than average, the process would be more uniform and less damaging. Hope flickered in Harry's chest. How? A potion, primarily, combined with certain meditative practices. The formula is complex and requires ingredients that are challenging to obtain. But not impossible. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. There is, however, a matter I must discuss with you first. Harry braced himself, recognizing the headmaster's tone. I have reason to believe that Kronos was not working alone. The hope in Harry's chest dimmed. What do you mean? The Department of Mysteries has been investigating his quarters and personal effects. They discovered correspondence suggesting he was part of a small group, wizards and witches who called themselves the Temporal Conclave. A group of time manipulators? Harry asked, alarmed. Not all possessed abilities like yours or Kronos's, Dumbledore clarified. Some were researchers, theorists, others simply beneficiaries of temporal magic. But they shared a common goal, mastery over time itself. And you think they might come looking for me? Because I absorbed Kronos's power? It is a possibility we must consider, Dumbledore admitted. Particularly as several items from Kronos's quarters have gone missing since his demise. Including notes detailing his observations about you. Harry's stomach clenched. So they know about me. I believe so, yes. Great, Harry muttered. As if I didn't have enough people after me already. Dumbledore's expression softened slightly. I do not tell you this to add to your burdens, Harry, but to ensure you are prepared. Knowledge, in this case, is our strongest defense. What do we know about this conclave? How many are there? What can they do? Details are frustratingly scarce, Dumbledore said. The Ministry has identified 3 potential members besides Kronos, but their whereabouts are unknown. As for their capabilities, we can only speculate based on fragmentary records. Harry rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. So what do we do? For now, we proceed with stabilizing your condition using Flammel's methods. Once you have better control over your abilities, we will be better positioned to address any threats that emerge. Dumbledore tapped the journal. Study this. Miss Granger's assistance would be valuable, given the complexity of the material. Harry nodded, still processing the news about the conclave. Is there anything else I should know? Dumbledore hesitated, then said, just one thing. Among Kronos's notes was a particular observation that caught my attention. He believed your ability was not merely a result of surviving the killing curse, but specifically tied to the fragment of Voldemort's soul that resides within you. Harry's blood ran cold. The soul fragment affects my magic. It appears to act as a sort of temporal anchor, Dumbledore explained carefully. When you stop time, that fragment remains connected to its original timeline, Voldemort's timeline. This creates the tension that allows you to exist in the stopped moment. So my ability comes from Voldemort? Like Parseltongue? Harry felt sick at the thought. Not exactly. The ability is yours, a product of your own magical nature. But its particular manifestation may be shaped by the soul fragment's presence. Dumbledore's blue eyes held Harry's gaze steadily. This may also explain why the temporal energy from Kronos's chronometer integrated with your magic rather than destroying you. Your system was already adapted to handling temporal anomalies. Harry sat back, trying to absorb this new information. What does this mean for defeating Voldemort? If my ability is tied to his soul fragment. That, Dumbledore said gravely, is the question we must answer before confronting him directly. It is possible that removing the soul fragment might affect your abilities in unpredictable ways. Or it might free them completely, Harry countered, grasping at optimism. If the fragment is just an anchor, maybe without it, I could control time even better. Perhaps, Dumbledore allowed. But it is a risk we must carefully consider. Harry nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the implications. I should get started on Flammel's research right away. The sooner I can stabilize my condition, the better prepared I'll be, for Voldemort or this conclave. A wise approach. Dumbledore rose from his desk. I have taken the liberty of gathering most of the ingredients required for Flammel's stabilizing potion. Professor Slughorn has agreed to assist with its brewing, though he believes it is merely an advanced aging potion for my personal use. Harry smiled despite himself. Always a step ahead, aren't you, Professor? I try to be, though the older I get, the more steps I seem to miss, Dumbledore replied with a self-deprecating smile. One final thought before you go, Harry. Whatever the origin of your ability, remember that it is how we use our gifts that defines them, not where they came from. The next few weeks passed in a blur of research, experimentation, and increasingly precise control over his abilities. Harry spent hours each day studying Flammel's journal with Hermione, practicing the meditative techniques designed to harmonize temporal energy flow. Professor Slughorn, believing he was helping Dumbledore with a personal project, supervised the brewing of the stabilization potion, a complex concoction that required ingredients as diverse as powdered time-turner sand, phoenix ashes, and the freely given blood of a centaur, which Dumbledore somehow procured through Forenza. This is the most complex potion I've ever attempted, Hermione admitted as they stirred the simmering cauldron in the room of requirement. Some of these techniques aren't even covered in any WT-level studies. Good thing we have the Half-Blood Prince's book, Ron said, checking the annotations in the borrowed potions textbook that had been helping Harry all year. Hermione frowned. I still don't trust those notes. We should stick to Flamel's instructions exactly. The prince hasn't steered me wrong yet, Harry pointed out, carefully adding 7 drops of Acromantula venom. And some of his modifications actually align with what Flamel suggests about accelerating alchemical reactions. The potion turned a shimmering silver, exactly as described in Flamel's notes. Hermione relaxed slightly. 3 more days of simmering, then it should be ready. While the potion brewed, Harry continued honing his control over time manipulation. Under Dumbledore's guidance, he practiced creating localized temporal fields, slowing or accelerating time in specific areas without affecting his own aging. The key, Dumbledore explained during one session, is to externalize the effect rather than channeling it through your body. Think of it as creating a bubble of altered time that exists independently of you. Harry concentrated, visualizing a sphere of slowed time around an apple Dumbledore had placed on his desk. The air around the fruit rippled slightly, and when Dumbledore dropped a quill beside it, the feather fell in slow motion within the affected area. Excellent progress, Dumbledore beamed. And how do you feel? Any strain? To Harry's surprise, there was almost none. It's like I'm directing the energy instead of generating it. Much less tiring. Precisely. Dumbledore looked delighted. This is the fundamental difference between your approach and Kronos's. He consumed time to fuel his abilities, while you are learning to work with the natural temporal currents that already exist. By the time the potion was ready, Harry had made remarkable strides in both control and endurance. The random temporal effects had stopped completely, and he could maintain complicated time manipulations without experiencing the crushing exhaustion that had plagued him before. The day came to test Flamel's stabilization potion. Harry, Ron, Hermione, Dumbledore, and Madame Pomfrey gathered in the hospital wing after hours, the curtains drawn around a private bed. I've run every diagnostic spell I know, Pomfrey said, reviewing her findings. Mr. Potter's current biological age appears to be approximately 21, 5 years advanced from his chronological age of 16. And the temporal flux? Dumbledore inquired. Concentrated in his neural pathways and magical core, she replied. Some areas are aging at nearly triple the normal rate, while others remain consistent with his chronological age. Harry stared at the glowing diagnostic model hovering above him, showing his body with different colors indicating varying aging rates. His brain and heart glowed an alarming red, while his extremities were a calmer blue. If this continues unchecked, Pomfrey said grimly, the strain on his system will become unsustainable within a few years. Hermione squeezed Harry's hand wordlessly. Ron's face had gone pale. Then we proceed, Dumbledore said, nodding to the crystal vial of silver liquid on the bedside table. Nicholas's notes were quite clear about the effects, though I must warn you, Harry, the process may be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable how? Harry asked, picking up the vial. The potion forces a temporal reset throughout your system, Dumbledore explained. Areas aging too quickly will slow, those aging too slowly will accelerate, until everything reaches equilibrium. The sensations as this occurs can be disconcerting. Harry looked at the shimmering liquid, then at his friends' worried faces. Bottoms up, then, he said with forced cheer, and drank the potion in one swallow. It tasted like liquid metal and burned all the way down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then pain exploded through every cell in his body. Harry gasped, doubling over. It felt like being simultaneously stretched and compressed, burned and frozen. His vision fractured, showing him past, present, and possible futures all overlaid on each other. Harry! Hermione cried, reaching for him. Don't touch him. Dumbledore warned, pulling her back. The temporal flux is unstabilizing before it can reharmonize. Any contact could disrupt the process. Harry couldn't hear them over the roaring in his ears. Time itself seemed to be flowing through him, washing away years in some places while adding them in others. He caught glimpses of himself as a child, as he was now, as an old man, all existing simultaneously. The pain crescendoed to an unbearable peak, then suddenly vanished. Harry collapsed back onto the bed, panting. His vision slowly cleared, the fractured time streams resolving back into normal sight. Did it work? He managed to ask, his voice hoarse. Madame Pomfrey was already casting diagnostic spells, her expression shifting from concern to surprise. Remarkable, she murmured. The temporal flux has stabilized almost completely. Every system is now aging at the same rate. And that rate? Dumbledore asked. Approximately 1.5 times normal, she replied. Faster than average, but consistent and manageable. Harry sat up slowly, testing how he felt. The constant background tension he'd been carrying for months had vanished. He felt integrated. Whole in a way he hadn't since discovering his ability. There's something else, he said, focusing on his temporal perception. I can see more clearly now. The time streams are more defined, less chaotic. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. The stabilization has likely enhanced your natural abilities while removing the detrimental effects. How much control do you feel you have? Harry concentrated on a glass of water beside the bed. With barely a thought, he created a tiny temporal field around it, accelerating time within the small space. The water evaporated in seconds, leaving an empty glass. Much better than before, he said, surprised at how effortless it had been. And I don't feel drained at all. The potion has harmonized your relationship with temporal energy, Dumbledore explained. You're no longer fighting against time's natural flow, but working with it. Ron grinned. So you're fixed. Not exactly fixed, Hermione corrected, always precise. He'll still age faster than normal, but at a consistent, manageable rate. And his abilities should be more reliable now. Harry nodded. I'll take it. Compared to where I was before, this is brilliant. Madame Pomfrey insisted he remain in the hospital wing overnight for observation. As his friends left, promising to return first thing in the morning, Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since discovering his ability, he felt like he might have a future beyond the immediate crisis. A future that, while shorter than most, would still be his to shape. The dream came that night, more vivid and disturbing than any he'd experienced before. He stood in a circular stone chamber, 13 black pedestals arranged in a perfect circle. On each pedestal sat a different timepiece, hourglasses, sundials, strange contraptions of gears and crystals that pulsed with familiar golden light. In the center of the circle stood 3 figures in gray robes, their faces obscured by hoods. They were chanting in a language Harry didn't recognize, their voices creating a discordant harmony that made his skin crawl. The chronometer is shattered, one said in accented English. Its power scattered. Not scattered, another replied, a woman's voice. Absorbed. By the Potter boy. Then we take it from him, said the third, their voice unnaturally deep. The conclave must be restored. The scene shifted. Harry saw Hogwarts from above, a dark cloud descending toward the castle. Within the cloud, time itself seemed distorted, accelerating, slowing, stopping in chaotic patterns. The boy must be brought before the convergence, the deep voice continued. His power harvested properly. And if he resists, asked the woman. The first figure laughed coldly. Time devours all things in the end. Even the boy who lived. Harry jerked awake, his heart pounding. The hospital wing was dark and quiet, moonlight streaming through the high windows. But something felt wrong. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with potential. He reached for his wand on the bedside table, every instinct screaming danger. A soft clicking sound came from the shadows at the far end of the ward. Harry squinted, trying to see through the darkness. A figure stood there, barely visible, tall and thin, manipulating something that glinted in the moonlight. Who's there? Harry called, raising his wand. Time and tide wait for no man, Mr. Potter, came a woman's voice, the same from his dream. But perhaps they might wait for you. Harry cast Lumos wordlessly, illuminating the ward. The woman standing at the far end wore grey robes with silver embroidery depicting clock faces and astronomical symbols. Her hood was down, revealing a severe face with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to shift color in the wand light. "You're from the Conclave," Harry said, sliding out of bed and keeping his wand trained on her. "Very good." She smiled thinly. "I am Chronoptera Tempus, Keeper of Moments. And you, Harry Potter, have something that belongs to us." Harry backed up slightly, putting the bed between them. "If you mean Kronos' power, I didn't exactly ask for it. And yet you've been using it quite effectively," she observed. "Our sources within the castle have been most informative about your progress." Harry's mind raced. Someone in Hogwarts was reporting to the Conclave. "What do you want from me?" "Initially, we wanted the chronometer, Mortimer's precious device. But you've destroyed it and absorbed its energy." Her gaze sharpened. "So now we want you." "Not going to happen," Harry said flatly. Chronoptera laughed softly. "You misunderstand. We don't wish to harm you. Quite the opposite. We want to offer you a place among us." That caught Harry off guard. "What?" "The Temporal Conclave has existed for millennia, Mr. Potter. We are the guardians of time itself, ensuring its proper flow and preventing catastrophic disruptions." She took a step closer. What happened to Mortimer was unfortunate, but perhaps inevitable. He had become unstable in recent centuries. He was stealing time from innocent people, Harry said coldly. "A regrettable deviation from our principles," she acknowledged. "One we had been monitoring with growing concern. His obsession with extending his own life had corrupted his judgment." Harry didn't lower his wand. "And I'm supposed to believe you're different? That the rest of the Conclave doesn't feed on other people's time?" "We each have our methods of temporal manipulation," Chronoptera said carefully. "Some more ethical than others. But what you've achieved, stabilizing Kronos' power within yourself, controlling it without consumption, this is unprecedented. Valuable. So you want to study me," Harry concluded. "Turn me into a lab rat for your temporal experiments." "We want to learn from you," she corrected. "And in return, offer knowledge that could help you master your abilities completely. Perhaps even extend your lifespan beyond what Flamel's potion has achieved." Harry hesitated, caught off guard by the offer. "How do you know about the potion?" She smiled enigmatically. "We have our ways of observing temporal events of interest. Your recent stabilization created quite a ripple." Before Harry could respond, the hospital wing doors burst open. Dumbledore stood in the doorway, wand raised, power radiating from him in palpable waves. "I believe that's quite enough midnight recruitment, Chronoptera," he said, his voice deceptively mild. The woman turned, seemingly unsurprised by the headmaster's appearance. "Albus. It's been decades. You're looking well for a man who has refused our offers so consistently." "The Conclave's definition of well-being has always differed from my own," Dumbledore replied, moving into the room. "I must ask you to leave Hogwarts immediately. Mr. Potter is under my protection." Chronoptera sighed. "Always so protective of your chess pieces, Albus. Even when offering them a better board." "Harry is not a piece in anyone's game," Dumbledore said sharply. "Nor is his power a commodity to be harvested, studied, or controlled by your Conclave." She studied Dumbledore for a long moment, then turned back to Harry. "The offer stands, Mr. Potter. When you tire of aging at an accelerated rate, when you seek true mastery over your gift rather than Albus's cautious half-measures, the Conclave will welcome you." From her robes, she produced a small silver hourglass unlike any time-turner Harry had seen. With a twist of her fingers, the air around her rippled, and she simply vanished, not with the crack of apparition, but with a soft displacement of air, as if she'd stepped sideways out of reality. Harry lowered his wand, his heart still racing. "You know her. The Temporal Conclave and I have history," Dumbledore admitted, moving to check the wards around the hospital wing. They approached me after I defeated Grindelwald, believing my magical power made me a suitable candidate for their order. And you refused. Their philosophy regarding the manipulation of time struck me as dangerously arrogant. Dumbledore's expression was grim. They view time as a resource to be controlled rather than a fundamental force to be respected. Harry sank onto the edge of his bed. She said they have sources in the castle. Someone's been watching me, reporting back. I suspected as much when certain details about your condition became known outside our small circle. Dumbledore nodded. Rest assured, I will investigate thoroughly. Do you think they'll try again? To recruit me or take me by force? The Conclave rarely acts directly, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. They prefer manipulation, persuasion. Chronoptera's appearance tonight was likely meant to plant seeds of doubt and curiosity, to make you question whether your current path is the best one. Harry had to admit the woman's offer had been tempting, if only for a moment. She mentioned extending my lifespan beyond what Flamel's potion achieved. A tempting carrot, Dumbledore agreed. Though I suspect the methods would come with costs far greater than the years they might add. Harry nodded slowly. I'm not interested in becoming like Kronos. Whatever time I have, I want it to be mine, not stolen from others. A wise perspective, Dumbledore said approvingly. Now, I suggest we both try to get some rest. Tomorrow we must consider what Chronoptera's appearance means for your safety going forward. After Dumbledore left, Harry lay awake for hours, turning over the night's events in his mind. The Conclave clearly had resources and knowledge beyond anything he'd imagined. Their interest in him was both flattering and terrifying. But what disturbed him most was the dream that had preceded Chronoptera's arrival. It hadn't felt like an ordinary nightmare, but like a glimpse into something real, as if his enhanced temporal perception had somehow allowed him to witness the Conclave's plans. The Convergence, they had called it. Something about harvesting his power. Whatever it was, Harry had a sinking feeling that Chronoptera's recruiting attempt was just the beginning of his troubles with the Temporal Conclave. The next morning, Harry was released from the hospital wing with a clean bill of health, or as clean as possible for someone aging at 1.5 times the normal rate. He rejoined Ron and Hermione at breakfast, relaying the night's strange encounter in hushed tones. A whole secret society of time manipulators. Ron looked disturbed. Just what we needed, another group of nutters after you. At least they're not actively trying to kill me, Harry pointed out. Just recruit me. For now, Hermione said darkly. But if you continue to refuse them. I know. Harry pushed his eggs around his plate. Dumbledore's looking into who might be their informant in the castle. Could be anyone, Ron muttered, glancing suspiciously around the great hall. Student, teacher, portrait. I'm more concerned about this convergence you saw in your dream, Hermione said. It sounds like some kind of ritual or event they're planning. Yeah, and apparently they need me for it. Harry sighed. Never a dull moment. As they left the great hall, Professor McGonagall intercepted them. Potter, the headmaster wishes to see you immediately. Weasley and Granger may accompany you if you wish. Her tight expression told Harry this wasn't a routine meeting. What's happened? It's best Albus explains, she replied tersely. The password is, Tempus Fugit. They hurried to Dumbledore's office, finding the headmaster standing over his pensive, his expression grave. Ah, Harry. Thank you for coming so quickly. Dumbledore gestured to the stone basin. I've received disturbing intelligence regarding both Voldemort and the Conclave that I believe you should see. Harry approached the pensive cautiously. What kind of intelligence? A memory from Professor Snape, Dumbledore explained. He was summoned by Voldemort last night and witnessed something unexpected. Harry exchanged glances with Ron and Hermione before nodding. All right. Let's see it. The three friends plunged their faces into the silvery substance, falling through darkness until they landed in a dimly lit stone chamber. Death Eaters stood in a circle around Lord Voldemort, who sat on a throne-like chair, Nagini coiled at his feet. "My faithful servants," Voldemort was saying, his high, cold voice sending shivers down Harry's spine. "Today marks a new phase in our ascension to power. For too long, we have been constrained by the limitations of conventional magic. But no longer." He gestured, and two Death Eaters dragged forward a struggling figure in grey robes. The hood fell back, revealing a middle-aged man with completely white hair despite his relatively young face. "A member of the Conclave," Hermione whispered. "This," Voldemort announced, "is Tempus Flux, a wizard who possesses knowledge we require. Knowledge about the manipulation of time itself." The captured Conclave member spat at Voldemort's feet. "You understand nothing of temporal magic, Riddle. It would destroy your fractured soul to attempt it." Voldemort's lipless mouth curved in a terrible smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it will grant me the ultimate power, to rewrite history itself." Harry felt his blood run cold. Rewrite history? Could Voldemort actually be planning to change the past? "Legilimens," Voldemort hissed, pointing his wand at the prisoner. The man screamed, his back arching as Voldemort invaded his mind. After several agonizing minutes, the Dark Lord withdrew, looking satisfied. "The convergence," he murmured. "Yes, I see now. A temporal nexus point that occurs once every century, when the boundaries between time streams are at their thinnest." He turned to his Death Eaters. "And it happens in 3 days' time." "Master," Bellatrix Lestrange simpered from the circle, "what does this mean for us?" "It means, Bella, that we will harness this convergence for our own purposes." Voldemort rose from his throne. "According to our guest's memories, the Conclave has been preparing a ritual to stabilize the temporal fluctuations Potter has been causing. But we shall use their preparations for a different purpose, to send my consciousness back in time, to prevent my original defeat." Harry gasped. If Voldemort could return to the night his parents died, change what happened. "It's not possible," the captured Conclave member groaned. "You need Potter present at the convergence. His temporal signature is the key." "Then we shall have Potter," Voldemort said simply. "The Conclave has kindly been tracking him for us. They will lead us right to him." The memory shifted, showing Snape departing the meeting and apparating away. Then they were rising out of the Pensieve, back in Dumbledore's office. "Voldemort wants to use this convergence to change the past," Harry said, his mind reeling. "To stop himself from being defeated when he tried to kill me as a baby." "So it would seem," Dumbledore confirmed grimly. "A plan both brilliant and desperately dangerous. Altering such a pivotal moment could unravel our entire timeline. But is it even possible?" Hermione asked. "Everything I've read about time says you can't change events that have already happened, not substantially, anyway. Conventional time magic, like time turners, operates within closed causal loops," Dumbledore explained. "But the convergence is different, a natural phenomenon where multiple time streams intersect. Theoretically, one could use it to create a branching timeline, a new reality where different choices lead to different outcomes." "And the Conclave knows about this?" Harry asked. "They're planning to use it too. For a different purpose, it seems," Dumbledore mused. "According to Tempus Flux, they intended to use the convergence to stabilize the temporal fluctuations you've been causing. Which might mean taking away my ability," Harry concluded. "Or controlling it," Hermione suggested. "Harnessing it for their own purposes." Ron looked between them. "So we've got two different groups of powerful wizards planning to use Harry in some temporal ritual in 3 days. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Where is this convergence supposed to happen?" Harry asked. "That," Dumbledore said, "is the question I've been attempting to answer since viewing this memory." Professor Snape was unable to extract that specific detail. Hermione's brow furrowed in concentration. If it's a natural temporal phenomenon that occurs every century, there might be historical records of previous convergences. An excellent suggestion, Miss Granger, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. I've already dispatched Order members to search various magical archives. What about the Department of Mysteries? Harry suggested. They study time, don't they? The time room might have records. Indeed. I've contacted certain, sympathetic elements within the department. We should have information shortly. Harry paced the office, his mind racing. We can't just wait for them to come after me. We need to be proactive. What are you suggesting? Dumbledore asked. If we can figure out where the convergence will happen, we can get there first. Set a trap. Harry's expression hardened. This could be our chance to confront Voldemort on our terms, not his. Dumbledore studied him thoughtfully. A bold strategy, though not without significant risk. Everything involving Voldemort has significant risk, Harry countered. But this time I have something he doesn't understand, control over time itself. Your abilities have indeed progressed remarkably, Dumbledore acknowledged. But remember that Voldemort now has a Conclave member as his prisoner. The knowledge he could extract. All the more reason to act quickly, Harry insisted. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Very well. We will prepare for a confrontation at the convergence, once we determine its location. In the meantime, I suggest you continue honing your temporal abilities. You may need every ounce of control you can muster. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of preparation. Harry spent hours in the room of requirement, pushing the limits of his newly stabilized abilities under Dumbledore's guidance. He learned to create multiple temporal fields simultaneously, slowing enemies while accelerating allies, freezing projectiles in mid-air while remaining mobile himself. The key to efficiency, Dumbledore explained, is precision. Don't freeze an entire room if you only need to stop a single spell. Don't slow an entire person if you only need to impede their wand arm. Harry practiced on training dummies, then on Ron and Hermione, with their enthusiastic consent. By the second day, he could pluck spells from the air and redirect them, slow an opponent's reflexes to treacle-like speed, and create protected bubbles where time flowed normally within a larger frozen field. Most importantly, the stabilization potion had worked wonders for his endurance. Where previously freezing time for half an hour had aged him visibly and left him exhausted, he could now maintain complex temporal manipulations for similar durations with minimal strain. Your control is becoming quite remarkable, Dumbledore observed after a particularly impressive demonstration where Harry had navigated through a room full of hovering objects, rearranging them while time was frozen for everything but himself. I dare say you've already surpassed Kronos in finesse, if not raw power. I still can't do what Chronoptera did, Harry pointed out. That sideways step through time to disappear. Temporal displacement, Dumbledore nodded. A highly advanced technique that requires decades of study. Though given your natural affinity, you might master it sooner than most. On the evening of the second day, the breakthrough came. Kingsley Shacklebolt arrived at Hogwarts with intelligence from the Department of Mysteries. We've located records of the previous convergence, he reported in Dumbledore's office, where the Order had gathered. It occurs at locations with naturally high magical and temporal resonance, following a pattern that shifts with each centennial occurrence. And this year's location? Dumbledore prompted. Stonehenge, Kingsley replied grimly. The calculations are certain. The temporal energies are already building there. Stonehenge, Moody growled from his corner. Publicly accessible, difficult to secure, surrounded by Muggle lands. Couldn't be worse for an ambush. Actually, it's perfect, Harry countered, studying the map Kingsley had brought. I've been there on a school trip before the Dursleys knew I was a wizard. The stones create natural corridors and barriers we can use strategically. We'll need to evacuate any Muggles and establish a perimeter, Kingsley said. The Ministry can handle that part, we'll create a gas leak story or something similar. And Voldemort? Lupin asked. Do we know how he plans to approach? Professor Snape believes the attack will come at midnight tomorrow, Dumbledore answered. The peak of the convergence. Voldemort will bring his inner circle, but not a full army. The ritual requires precision, not brute force. And the conclave? Harry asked. They'll be there too, won't they? Almost certainly, Dumbledore confirmed. Which complicates matters significantly. We will effectively be facing two opposing forces, each with their own agenda regarding Harry. Three-way battles rarely end well for anyone, Moody observed darkly. Then we need to be smarter than both of them, Harry said, an idea forming. In fact, maybe we can use their competing agendas against each other. The group looked at him curiously. Voldemort wants to use the convergence to change the past, Harry explained. The conclave wants to use it to control my temporal abilities. What if we let them think they're both going to get what they want? A slow smile spread across Dumbledore's face. A deception within a deception. Go on, Harry. We make Voldemort believe I've been captured by the conclave. He'll attack them to get to me, and they'll defend themselves. While they're fighting each other. We strike, Kingsley finished, nodding appreciatively. It's risky, Tonks said, her hair shifting from pink to a worried blue. What if they realize they're being played and team up against us? Unlikely, Dumbledore mused. Voldemort's ego would never allow him to truly ally with another power. And the conclave's entire philosophy revolves around controlling temporal magic, not sharing it. The planning continued late into the night, strategies being refined, contingencies established. By dawn, they had a plan that, while dangerous, offered their best chance at confronting both threats simultaneously. As the meeting broke up, Dumbledore held Harry back. There is one aspect of tomorrow's confrontation we have not discussed openly, he said quietly once they were alone. Harry nodded, having anticipated this. The prophecy. Neither can live while the other survives. Yes. The convergence may present an opportunity to fulfill the prophecy, but it also presents unique dangers. Dumbledore's expression was grave. If Voldemort succeeds even partially in his aim to alter the past, the consequences could be catastrophic. I know. Harry met the headmaster's gaze steadily. But I think I finally understand why I was given this ability. Why time broke for me after surviving the killing curse. It's been preparing me for this moment, this specific confrontation. Dumbledore studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps you're right, Harry. The symmetry would be fitting, Voldemort trying to use time to undo his defeat, while you use time to ensure it. Whatever happens tomorrow, Harry said, I'm ready. And as he said it, he realized it was true. The weeks of struggling with his ability, learning its costs and limitations, mastering its potential, all of it had been leading to this moment. A confrontation not just with Voldemort, but with time itself. Stonehenge stood silent under the starlit sky, the ancient stones casting long shadows in the moonlight. The site had been evacuated hours earlier, Ministry officials establishing a perimeter that kept curious muggles at bay with memory charms and confusion hexes. Harry crouched behind one of the fallen outlying stones, his invisibility cloak pulled tight around him. Ron and Hermione were positioned at other points around the circle, along with members of the Order. Dumbledore had taken up position at the center of the monument, seemingly exposed but radiating quiet power. Anything? Harry whispered into the enchanted coin Hermione had created for communication. Nothing yet, came Ron's reply. But I can feel something, weird. Like the air is getting thicker. Harry felt it too, a growing pressure in the atmosphere, as if reality itself was being compressed. His temporal perception showed him strange ripples forming around the stones, past and future images overlapping with increasing frequency. The convergence is building, Dumbledore's calm voice came through the coin. Be ready. They will come soon. As if on cue, the air several yards from the stone circle rippled and parted. 3 figures in grey robes stepped through, members of the temporal conclave, including Chronoptera Tempus. Right on schedule, Ron muttered. The conclave members moved purposefully toward the center of the circle, unaware they were being watched. They began setting up what appeared to be small silver devices at specific points around the stones. Temporal anchors, Hermione's voice whispered through the coin. They're establishing a stable field for whatever ritual they're planning. Harry watched as Chronoptera directed the other two, her commanding presence evident even at a distance. They worked with practiced efficiency, occasionally consulting what looked like star charts and complex mathematical diagrams. The Dark Lord approaches, Dumbledore's voice warned suddenly. Positions, everyone. A moment later, the distinctive crack of apparition broke the silence. Death Eaters materialized at the edge of the monument, a dozen hooded figures led by Voldemort himself, his pale skin gleaming in the moonlight. The Conclave members spun to face the newcomers, clearly surprised by their arrival. "Good evening," Voldemort called, his high voice carrying across the stones. "I believe you're preparing something that requires Mr. Potter. How fortunate that I've brought him with me." Two Death Eaters dragged forward a struggling figure, a decoy Polyjuice to look like Harry, courtesy of a strand of his hair and a brave Order volunteer. Harry tensed, ready to move the moment the deception was discovered. According to their plan, the fake Harry would create confusion long enough for the two groups to engage each other, allowing the real Harry to maneuver into position. "Lord Voldemort," Chronoptera acknowledged coolly. "Your interference is unwelcome and unnecessary. The convergence is conclave business." "Not anymore." Voldemort stepped forward, Nagini slithering at his feet. "Your colleague Tempus Flux was most informative before his unfortunate expiration. The convergence offers access to the time stream itself, a power I intend to harness." "You have no comprehension of the forces you're meddling with," Chronoptera warned. "Temporal magic requires decades of study, discipline. I am Lord Voldemort," he cut her off. "I have mastered magics you cannot imagine. And with the boy's unique temporal signature, I shall master time itself." The fake Harry struggled more violently against his captors, playing his role perfectly. Chronoptera's eyes narrowed as she studied him. "Something's not right," she said suddenly. "That's not Potter's temporal signature." Voldemort's lipless mouth thinned. "What?" "A deception," Chronoptera hissed, raising her hand. A pulse of golden energy shot from her fingers, enveloping the fake Harry. The Polyjuice transformation instantly reversed, revealing a disguised Order member. Chaos erupted. Voldemort, enraged at being tricked, launched a killing curse at the nearest Conclave member. The Conclave retaliated with temporal spells that distorted the air around the Death Eaters, aging some while rejuvenating others to infancy. Harry seized his moment. Throwing off the invisibility cloak, he focused his power, creating a bubble of slowed time around the battling groups. Their movements became sluggish, spells crawling through the air at a fraction of their normal speed. "Now!" he shouted through the coin. Order members emerged from hiding positions, casting anti-apparition jinxes and shield charms. Dumbledore stepped forward from the center stone where he'd been concealed by a powerful disillusionment charm. "Tom," the headmaster called calmly. "Your plan has failed before it began." Voldemort, moving at normal speed despite Harry's temporal field, turned with a snarl. "Dumbledore. Always interfering, always one step behind. You cannot stop what is about to happen." With a violent gesture, Voldemort shattered Harry's temporal field, freeing his Death Eaters from the slowed time effect. The battle expanded, Order members engaging Death Eaters while the Conclave members continued their setup, seemingly intent on completing their ritual regardless of the conflict. Harry ducked behind a stone as spellfire erupted around him. Focusing his abilities, he created multiple small temporal fields, slowing curses aimed at Order members, accelerating the movement of his allies. It was like conducting a complex symphony, requiring precise control and split-second timing. "Harry!" Hermione called from nearby. "The Conclave is still setting up. Whatever they're planning, they're not stopping." He glanced toward the center of the circle. Chronoptera and her companions had almost completed their arrangement of silver devices. The air above the central altar stone was beginning to shimmer with golden light, the convergence manifesting. I need to get to the center, Harry told her. Cover me. Hermione nodded, sending a barrage of hexes toward a group of Death Eaters blocking his path. Ron appeared on his other flank, adding his own covering fire. Harry sprinted toward the center, dodging spells and leaping over fallen combatants. He froze time briefly to navigate through a particularly dense cluster of fighting, then released it once clear. Voldemort saw him moving and changed direction, cutting through the battlefield with serpentine grace. Potter, he hissed. Your temporal tricks cannot save you tonight. A killing curse hurtled toward Harry, who slowed it to a crawl rather than stopping it completely, a technique that required far less energy. He sidestepped the creeping green light and continued forward. Ahead, the golden glow above the altar stone was intensifying. Chronoptera stood before it, arms raised, chanting in an unknown language. The very air seemed to be tearing open, revealing glimpses of other times, ancient druids performing rituals, Victorian archaeologists measuring the stones, future tourists taking photographs with devices not yet invented. The convergence, Dumbledore's voice came through the enchanted coin. It's beginning. Harry, you must reach the center before either Voldemort or the Conclave can harness it. Harry redoubled his speed, but Voldemort was closing in from one side, Chronoptera watching his approach from the other. He was caught between them, exactly as both had planned. Potter. Voldemort called. You cannot escape your destiny. Tonight, I rewrite history. Mr. Potter, Chronoptera countered, the temporal energies you've absorbed must be stabilized before they tear reality apart. Come willingly, and the process will be painless. Harry stopped, caught between the two forces. The golden light from the convergence washed over him, and suddenly his temporal perception exploded. He could see everything, past, present, future, all overlaid and interconnected. The pattern of time itself became clear to him, more comprehensible than it had ever been. And in that moment of clarity, he understood what neither Voldemort nor the Conclave did. The convergence wasn't a tool to be used, it was a natural correction, a realignment of temporal energies that had been disrupted. Disrupted by him. His ability to stop time had been creating microfractures in reality, tiny tears that the convergence was designed to heal. If Voldemort or the Conclave interfered with that process, the damage could be catastrophic. You're both wrong, Harry called out. The convergence isn't a weapon or a tool. It's a healing process. Ignorant boy, Voldemort sneered. Step aside or die where you stand. But Chronoptera was studying Harry with new interest. You can see it, can't you? The pattern. The flow. Harry nodded. And I can see what will happen if either of you corrupts it. With newfound confidence, Harry strode toward the altar stone. The golden light intensified around him, responding to his presence, to the temporal energy he carried within him. Stop him. Voldemort commanded his Death Eaters. Several killing curses flew toward Harry simultaneously. Without even turning, he froze time in precise bubbles around each spell, then continued walking. To the observers, it appeared as if the deadly green light simply halted in midair. Your quarrel is with me, Tom, Dumbledore said, stepping between Harry and Voldemort. Let the boy do what he must. As the two most powerful wizards of the age engaged each other, Harry reached the altar stone. The golden light of the convergence engulfed him, lifting him slightly off the ground. Chronoptera approached cautiously. What are you doing, Potter? The ritual isn't complete. It doesn't need your ritual, Harry replied, his voice echoing strangely through the temporal distortions. It needs what I have. Understanding dawned on her face. The excess temporal energy you absorbed from Kronos. You're going to release it into the convergence. Harry nodded. It's what was supposed to happen all along. Kronos corrupted the natural flow by hoarding temporal energy. I'm going to return it. Chronoptera stepped back, signaling her companions to do the same. This is unprecedented. The consequences are mine to bear, Harry finished. Closing his eyes, Harry reached deep within himself, finding the reservoir of temporal energy he'd absorbed from the chronometer. It swirled within him like liquid gold, powerful and ancient. Drawing it forth required no spells, no incantations, just the simple intention to release what was never truly his. The energy flowed out of him in streams of golden light, feeding into the convergence above. As it left him, Harry felt lighter, more whole, as if a foreign presence had been extracted. Around the stone circle, the battle faltered as both sides witnessed the spectacular display. Streams of temporal energy arced between the standing stones, creating a dome of golden light that pulsed in rhythm with the universe itself. No! Voldemort's scream cut through the awed silence. The power is mine to claim. Breaking away from his duel with Dumbledore, Voldemort lunged toward the altar stone, his skeletal hand reaching for the heart of the convergence. "Tom, don't!" Dumbledore shouted. "You'll destabilize the entire process." But Voldemort was beyond reason, consumed by his desire to harness the temporal power. As his fingers touched the golden light, a horrific transformation began. Time itself seemed to attack him, aging, de-aging, fracturing his already damaged form. What is happening to him? Harry heard Ron yell from somewhere behind him. His soul is too fragmented, Dumbledore called back. The Horcruxes make him temporally unstable. The convergence is trying to correct the anomaly. Voldemort's body flickered between different ages and states, the handsome Tom Riddle, the inhuman creature reborn in the graveyard, an elderly version that had never existed, a child with terrible red eyes. "Potter!" he shrieked, his voice fluctuating between octaves. "What have you done?" Harry watched in horrified fascination. "I didn't do this, Tom." "You did, when you split your soul, you broke your own timeline. The convergence is just trying to fix it." The Dark Lord's body began to dissolve into particles of golden light, each fragment containing a different version of him from across his fractured timeline. His scream echoed across the stone circle, fading as his physical form disintegrated entirely. A shock wave of temporal energy exploded outward from where Voldemort had stood. Harry instinctively created a protective temporal field around his allies, slowing the wave's impact on them while allowing it to wash over the Death Eaters at full force. When the golden light cleared, the Death Eaters lay unconscious or disoriented. Of Voldemort, there was no sign, only a small pile of ash where he had stood. "Is he?" Ron began, approaching cautiously. "Gone," Dumbledore confirmed, picking up Voldemort's wand from beside the ashes. "Not dead, precisely, but removed from our timeline, scattered across the time stream like the fragments he made of himself." Harry felt the truth of it through his temporal perception. Voldemort wasn't gone completely, fragments of him existed across multiple points in time, but they were disconnected, unable to coalesce into a whole being again. The prophecy had been fulfilled in the most unexpected way. The golden light of the convergence was fading now, the temporal energies dissipating. Harry felt the excess power he'd absorbed from Kronos' chronometer fully discharged, leaving behind only his original ability, the natural gift that had awakened after surviving the killing curse. Chronoptera approached him as Order members began securing the fallen Death Eaters. "You understood," she said softly. "Somehow, you grasped what we've spent centuries studying." Harry shrugged. "I just listened to what time was telling me." She studied him with new respect. "The conclaves offer stands, Potter. Your insight would be valuable to us." "Thanks, but no." Harry glanced at his friends, at Dumbledore, at the Order members who had risked their lives. "My place is here, with the people I care about. However much time I have left." Chronoptera nodded, seemingly unsurprised. "Your ability should be stable now, without Kronos' corrupted energy influencing it. You may find your accelerated aging slows somewhat, though not to normal levels." "I can live with that," Harry said, and meant it. As the conclave members prepared to depart, Chronoptera turned back one last time. "Time is precious, Mr. Potter. Use yours wisely." With that, she and her companion stepped sideways through reality, vanishing as they had come. Epilogue: 5 years later, Harry stood at the edge of the Black Lake, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. At 21 chronologically, his body had stabilized at the biological equivalent of 30, still aging faster than normal, but at a much reduced rate since the convergence. "Thought I'd find you out here," called a familiar voice. He turned to see Ginny walking toward him, her holyhead harpies training robes fluttering in the evening breeze. "Just getting some fresh air before the ceremony," he said, smiling as she reached him. "Nervous about giving the commencement speech?" "Terrified," she admitted. But McGonagall insisted that the youngest defense against the dark arts professor in Hogwarts history should address the graduating class. Harry pulled her into his arms. "You'll be brilliant. Just tell them what you told me when I was brooding by moonlight all those years ago." "That time is precious?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "Exactly." He kissed her softly. "It's the most important lesson I've learned." Their moment was interrupted by the sound of running feet. Ron and Hermione were hurrying down from the castle, waving excitedly. "Harry!" "It worked!" Hermione called, brandishing a scroll of parchment. "The time stabilization potion modifications. The theoretical calculations check out." Harry's heart leaped. For years, Hermione had been researching ways to further slow his accelerated aging, building on Flamel's work and incorporating discoveries from Kronos's journals, recovered from the Department of Mysteries archives. "You're sure?" he asked, taking the scroll and scanning the complex formulae. "Positive," she beamed. "It won't stop the acceleration completely, but it should reduce it to about 1.1 times normal. Nearly ordinary aging." "Brilliant." Ron clapped Harry on the shoulder. "Maybe you'll only end up looking like my dad instead of Dumbledore when we're 50. They laughed together, the four friends silhouetted against the setting sun. Harry felt a profound sense of contentment wash over him. After Voldemort's defeat, he had chosen to live his life fully, refusing to let the uncertainty of his lifespan define him. He had completed his education, become an Auror, and recently accepted a part-time teaching position at Hogwarts alongside his field work. His relationship with Ginny had deepened into something precious and enduring. And his ability to manipulate time had become a carefully guarded tool, used sparingly and with full awareness of its cost. Sometimes he still froze time, to save a life during a dangerous Auror operation, to prevent a catastrophe, or even occasionally for something as simple as prolonging a perfect moment with Ginny. Each use aged him slightly faster, but now he understood the trade-off and accepted it willingly. As they walked back toward the castle for the graduation ceremony, Harry's temporal perception showed him glimpses of possible futures, some longer than others, some happier, some more challenging. But all of them were his, to shape as he chose with whatever time he had. And in the end, that was what mattered most, not how many years he had, but how well he lived them. "Come on," he said to his friends and the woman he loved. "We've got a graduation to attend." Together, they climbed the hill toward Hogwarts, where the Great Hall awaited them, filled with students whose futures stretched bright and unwritten before them, the most precious gift of all. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.